So, good morning, everybody. My name is Tal, and I come speaking to you today wearing two hats. One hat of mine is a technical co-founder of Orbs, and that is a next-generation blockchain infrastructure. And on the other hand, I'm also the head of Kin Engineering. And Kin is a decentralized app, a decentralized application by Kik Interactive that is actually running on top of a blockchain. So I have a unique experience of seeing both sides of the coin, building the infrastructure and the application, a major application that is running on top of it. So, blockchain. Blockchain is getting too big to ignore, and I'm not going to pitch about why blockchain is interesting, but I'm going to focus on blockchain for consumer applications, because that is the space that I'm passionate about. And we are looking and we're seeing like something very strange happening in the market, because blockchain is a cutting-edge space. It's a very risky space. And we see established consumer brands starting to go into the space. And you hear about it in the news. We hear about Telegram, a consumer application with 170 million users, going and raising around $2 billion in this space, in the blockchain project. We see Kik Interactive, which is also, it's a 150 employee big company that has been around for 8 years, and it has, in September, raised over $100 million doing a decentralized application on blockchain. We see Overstock, which is a consumer brand competing with Amazon, turning into a Bitcoin tech company, and the list goes on and on. We see those big names like Kodak announcing they're going into the space. And this is super strange to me. So you ask yourselves, why do these consumer brands, why do these consumer applications decentralize? And from sitting inside of Kin, I can share my insights with you regarding why did that happen. So first of all, tokens. Tokens are amazing. They are becoming the new standard for transfer of value in the digital world. Why? Because tokens don't have many of the plagues that affect fiat currencies for so many years. The transfer is instantaneous. Okay? Tokens are cross-border. There are no middlemen, so the fees are lower. They're easier to secure, so the fees are lower. They support microtransactions. They are programmable. They're so much easier to work with. And when you can create tokens, you can create handcrafted economies. And economies are important because consumer applications, as you know, have a very difficult time monetizing. Okay, it's a very difficult world. And when you can control the economy, when you can design a token that behaves according to a certain pattern or according to certain rules, then what you get is a controlled environment for monetization, and that is super interesting. It's the first time we were able to do something like that. And when you have these economies emerging, economies of billions of dollars, and you want to hold these economies somewhere, you don't want to hold these economies on your own servers, okay? You don't want to hold billions of dollars of other people's money on your servers, because then you're basically building a bank. And building a bank is difficult. Banks don't have a lot of innovation. It's a difficult space. And decentralization allows us to be able to show that we don't have control of this ledger and be able to focus on innovation and not on securing all of this, and use decentralization to help secure it for us. Fairness is also a big thing in the consumer space, because all of these systems, you see social networks, for example, and users play a key part. And up until now, all the economic value created inside those networks was not shared with the users. And now, through fairness and decentralization, we can finally create models that distribute the economic value to all stakeholders, including end users. And that is also super interesting. And I think the last but not least is the ability to compete. Because consumer applications are afraid. You see the market growing into Google and Facebook, these huge monopolies nobody can beat, nobody can fight against. And decentralization allows us to align smaller stakeholders together and create ecosystems. And this is very interesting. So I want to share with you some concrete examples of actual projects that have decentralized that I've had the pleasure of working with in the last few months. So the first is revolving around ad tech. And ad tech is a very interesting space, and if you look at it, it's very centralized at the moment. And in ad tech, for example, you have bidding platforms, okay, where an advertiser places a bid, and then a publisher over publishers, and you have a centralized system that mediates between the two. And when you have a centralized company, for example, Google, doing this process for everybody, then everybody needs to trust this company. And they need to make sure that they don't manipulate, and they do have interests, and they do want to make a profit. So there is incentive in the market to create a decentralized platform where the rules are clear, and nobody can do any manipulation over them. So that is very interesting. Also, payments is a very exciting space for consumers. Okay, faster, cheaper alternatives to platforms like PayPal that truly support global peer-to-peer. And even when you have wallets like Venmo or Square Cash, for example, and you want to move money between them, today it's so difficult, you have to go through a bank, and that is slow and expensive. So using these technologies to move money between them in an efficient and cheaper way, that is also interesting. And if you look at companies like Kik, like in a project like Kin, they go in even a step further. And what they do is they take the digital services, the apps that facilitate those payments, and even reward them. And the way they do that is by doing an inflation over the token and sharing this value with everybody. So that is also something exciting that we weren't able to do before. Gaming is also an interesting space where you see you can replace the closed in-game currencies like Zynga points with assets that are traded everywhere and have real-world value. And this is not only relevant for gaming. Okay, look at airlines. Okay, they have systems like frequent flyer miles points, and you can trade those as well. So you see many, many examples, and this brings us to Orbs. So where does Orbs fit into all of this? So the group behind Orbs started as a consultancy that helped established companies, established consumer brands kind of go into this blockchain space. Okay, the space is pretty complicated and brand new. And one of these companies that walked in there with this team was Kik Interactive, okay, with a project called Kin. Kin has raised $100 million around September 2017. And this was the first billion-dollar company going into the blockchain space. That was super, super exciting. So from working with Kin, one of the things that we were in charge of as technology advisors is to design the infrastructure to take those centralized apps to millions of users into decentralized apps. And that is difficult. So in the beginning, we started working with existing infrastructure, platforms, well-known platforms like Ethereum, and these are beautiful platforms. But when you try to make them business applicable to consumer apps in mass scale, they just don't work. The market is so immature. And then you're left with the difficult options. For example, you can custom build all of the infrastructure in-house and tailor-make it for your own needs. And that is kind of what Telegram is doing. And that is why Telegram is raising so much money. Because to do a project like this is super expensive. You need 100 people, you need $100 million just for that. And this is the entire budget of Kin. So this doesn't make sense. And this is where Orbs emerged. So Orbs is a separate project, separately owned, that is raising this similar amount of money and is building an infrastructure that is tailor-made for these consumer applications and what they need. And it's very requirement-driven with these customers to actually build something from scratch that is answering what they need to do in production. So what is Orbs? So if you speak crypto, the crypto language, Orbs is a public and open blockchain infrastructure for established consumer brands. Okay? And we focus on SLAs, that apps that run on this platform have guaranteed performance. So even when the network becomes congested, things will not break down because consumer apps cannot afford that. We focus on consumer scale. That is very natural because consumer apps have millions and millions of users. We focus on consumer protection and regulation because we know that for brands, the regulatory and compliance aspects are important. It's often the slowest moving part of the roadmap because there is so much regulatory uncertainty in this space at the moment. And they are so big, they have so much to lose. And we focus on modern deployment paradigms because decentralized platforms have problems with consensus. If you want to update something material to the protocol or the smart contract that you do, you need everybody to agree. And then you can reach stagnation in the technology, and these are difficult problems that require complicated solutions. Now, what if you don't speak crypto and you want me to translate that last sentence to something that you're familiar with? Then the best way to look at this as infrastructure as a service, IaaS, kind of like Amazon Web Services. Okay, it's a platform, but it's just focused on decentralized blockchain applications. And it offers two main things for application developers. The first is computing infrastructure. Okay, kind of like Amazon EC2 or Amazon Lambda, just decentralized, and also focusing on storage solutions. For kind of like Amazon S3 or Amazon DynamoDB, just for decentralized applications. The status of Orbs, it's a relatively new project founded in 2017 It's raising around $133 million, and it's mostly money already raised. It's well funded. So we have the runway to actually make and build this thing. And all of the money was raised through a private sale to accredited investors only. We personally do not believe in public ICOs. The team is relatively small, but growing very rapidly. 35 people at the moment, and we have several customers. I think that is the exciting thing. Design partners that help us build this platform for a real production use case. Kick Interactive is one of them, and there are several more that have not yet gone public with their blockchain endeavors. The project until now has been in kind of semi-stealth mode. We are now publishing a position paper, 90-page position paper with everything we want to build, and an academic paper that we're publishing with the Technion. It's launching around Q2, the testnet. I don't have a lot of time to speak about the technology behind this, so I'll just give you a sneak peek about some of the exciting things. And one of the concepts that I love is virtualization. Because we're familiar with VLANs, virtual LANs, and we're familiar with VPSs. And what they do is they take shared infrastructure, and they give the illusion to people running on top of it that you have a private and dedicated infrastructure. And that is super important in blockchain as well, because the infrastructure has to be public for the consensus process to be effective and decentralized, but the apps running on top of it want to feel like the resources are dedicated to them. And that is a very complicated issue to resolve, and virtualization is, in my eyes, the best way to approach it. We also have the Hexa Group. The Hexa Group is something very interesting for companies because it's a professional services consultancy that is hand-holding companies on their transition to blockchain, kind of an A to Z service. And it's starting from product conception to economic model design to compliance and security, community and marketing, all the aspects, fundraising, writing the smart contracts for fundraising, exchanges and liquidity when the tokens eventually go live. And finally, injecting domain expertise into the team. That is, for example, why me, as a founder in Orbs, is also leading the engineering team for Kin. Okay, it's kind of like how this emerged. So, if you're debating if blockchain is relevant and applicable to your business, don't hesitate to talk to us. Thank you.